Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I'm back home and we're doing Bible study live. It's so exciting. We're finishing up our study on favorite siblings in the Bible. And last week, my wonderful sibling, Gina, led us in the study, and it was so good. Um, it was about Moses and Aaron and Miriam, and it was just so good. But she mentioned some siblings that I've been going back and forth about, and when she mentioned them, I think I want to finish up the series with them. And they are Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and they are a very familiar story. I'm not 100% sure where God is taking us with this. I noticed, just in quickly scanning it before sharing with you tonight, I noticed a couple of things I hadn't noticed before, but I don't know exactly where he's taking us. I literally just walked in the door, just got back home. So I've been in Texas and now I'm here. I have not been in the house good 30 minutes. So we're still gonna learn. So where we're gonna start is one of the stories. So there are two major stories that you hear about with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. But the first story, hello, my sweet sister, she just joined us. One of the first stories that you hear about is the story of Mary and Martha and their different approach to how they handled it when Jesus was visiting. So I'm going to read it first. I'm going to talk about it a little bit after. So if you go to Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, here's what it says. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. I want you to notice that phrasing. A woman named Martha opened her home to him, and I'll explain why a little bit later. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had yet to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered. And you know, when you say the name twice, there's just something special about that. Oh, Gina, Connie. You are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, I will say at different points in our lives, both of us, both me and my sister Gina, have been Martha, and both have been Mary at different points. There were times when I was so busy trying to get it done and do all the things and you know, be the hostess with the mostest and all of that, that I forgot to sit and enjoy. And I'm no longer that person. Gina can tell you that was some time ago. You know what got me was years ago. Gina said, your house is so clean and so pristine that I feel like before I can set my cup on the table, your hand is there to sweep it away into the kitchen and wash it, put it in the dishwasher, whatever. And I realized in that moment that was not the right tone I wanted to set in my home. I wanted people to feel comfortable. I didn't want it to be a hot mess, but I didn't want them to feel like I was so busy sweeping up after them while they were still there. Something. So I was in high school. Whenever the janitorial staff would come in, they always, no matter where you sat, your feet were always in the way. They always had to come with the broom and do it right there around your feet. And so basically that kind of sentiment is what I was doing unintentionally. This was years ago, thankfully. It was back in the 80s when Gina told me that. And I made an effort. I made an effort to just make my home feel comfortable. I want people to feel comfortable to sit and enjoy. I have friends who get up. I'm not Demond. Every time she comes, she's doing the dishes. She's like, I want to do something. I want to help. And people don't even hesitate. I remember one of my girlfriends said, I had a bunch of people over for a holiday, and one of them was cooking in the kitchen with me. And somebody said, you let somebody cook in your kitchen? And I was like, well, yeah, they want to make a special. We're all making dishes. They're making a dish. I want my home to feel like your home. So Gina, with her wise words, helped me out of that mindset so that I wouldn't do that. Gina isn't necessarily that person when, the host, is so busy doing the thing when you're there. It's the prep work in advance that kind of gets her into that Martha mode of, I got to do everything before the person comes over kind of thing. And really, most of the things that Gina notices, most people don't notice anyway, because she has an eye for this kind of stuff. So each of us have at times been Martha, and we are, I know I'm better, and I've seen Gina be better, just taking a breath and just be like, you know what? I just want to enjoy the people who are in the house. I'm not going to worry about what the house looks like right now. I just want to enjoy the folks who are in it. That you have to actually, you can swing too far on either side. Like some people keep their stuff like it's just me. It's out there, it's like you're burping and farting and everything all messy, trash poured out, and roaches and ants, and they're like, it's my home. You got that side where nobody's gonna feel comfortable anyway being in your home because it's so nasty. And you've got this side where you got the plastic on the sofa, and it's so so such a much, as my mom would have said, so such a much that nobody can feel comfortable. You don't want to err on either side of those. You don't want to err. There's something better than that. Jesus, like, y'all, you're doing too much. That's really what he's saying in Luke 10:38 through 42. You doing, Martha, you're doing too much. Sit down, honey. Just sit down. Sit down. So I love that scripture because it often reminds me to make the first thing the first thing, make the most important thing the most important thing, and not the other stuff. So that's the first. Now, then you got to go to John 11, because this is when we get into the situation with Lazarus. So there's a whole thing here, and we got to read this whole thing because there's something that comes after it that I never noticed until tonight. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So now I'm starting the 11:1 in John. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. It was the same one. And it's important to know that, because that actually, the busy, and the pouring, all of that happened before Lazarus died. So I want to make sure that you all catch that, because there are two other scriptures that talk about this. So, and yes, it is Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. So I want to point out, he's got a relationship with all three of them. He does. And this reminds me a little bit of the message that Gina did last week that was so good. He has a relationship with all three of them, loves Lazarus. Mary's wiping their feet with oil and, doing all the things. Martha's serving him, and then she realizes, I need to sit myself down. He's got a relationship with all three. So when Jesus heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. That's one line by itself, verse 5. That's it. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Now, verse 6, yet when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. Again, we don't know the end from the beginning. He does. He knows sickness isn't going to end in death. It's for God's glory. That's the bigger picture. I know this is going to be hard. I love all three of them. I can't go now because God's glory has to take place. Then he said to his disciples, after those 2 more days, let us go back to Judea. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back there? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? A man who walks by day will not stumble, for he sees by this world's light. It is when he walks by night that he stumbles, for he has no light. And they're looking at him like, okay. Not sure what you mean there, but okay. Verse 11, after he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. So he already knew he's already gone. In their mind, he's dead. I'm calling him sleep because I know I'm about to wake him up. He's not dead. If he's dead, if I say he's dead, he's dead. I'm not saying he's dead. He's asleep. His disciples replied, I love them. Some, people learn at they learn at different paces and whatnot. So, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. Then Thomas, called Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go. That way we may die with him. Thomas was like, you talk about, glass half empty. He was always, woe is me. This is just woe. He's the Eeyore of the group. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. And after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Now, we've done a separate message on this, that Jesus wept because of their grief. He saw them hurting. He hurt because they hurt. He knew he wasn't crying about the loss of Lazarus. He knew that's a wrap. He's getting back up. But he feels our pain. He feels our pain. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? There's always somebody talking smack. Always. I mean, it's one thing when the sisters lament, Lord, if you had been here, that's one thing. It's a whole other thing when I thought he could do the blind. Why didn't he, if he could have done, people always grumbling, always. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the efficient one, the sister of the dead man. By this time, there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Lord, you don't really want to move that stone. Got to clean up. I need to get some Lysol. We're going to be moving the stone, Lord. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Because, I have to wonder if he came out like, the mummy. Okay, he probably didn't. All right. Anyway, did he hop because his legs? I don't know. I don't know how he came out. However he came out, they got him unwrapped. All right. Now listen to this, y'all. Listen to what happens next. We're still in John, verse 45. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did put their faith in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing? They asked. Here is this man performing many miraculous signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the Jews. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the desert, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. All right, now, I'll read the last couple verses. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple area, they asked one another, what do you think? Isn't he coming to the feast at all? But the chief priests and Pharisees had given orders that if anyone found out where Jesus was, he should report it so that they might arrest him. Now look at chapter 12, just verses 1 through 11. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here, now, remember at the beginning where it said that Mary was the same one who poured oil on his feet at the beginning of 11. But look what it says in 12. Here a dinner was given in Jesus's honor. Martha served, of course, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus's feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. I'm going to show you why that's important. It's a timing thing because of what it said earlier, but listen to what this says. But one of the disciples, we know Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? I'm pious and religious, and I know what that perfume should have been used for. It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. That's in writing. They knew. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him. I didn't know they put a hit out on Lazarus. Did you, sister? Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. So anyway, if you read 12, 1 through 11, it's perfumed, the dinner, preparing him for burial, all of that. And Lazarus is at the table. And this is a big deal because people are coming over to see Lazarus, who was raised from the dead, coming over to Jesus. That's what that says. But if you go back and look at just a few verses in Matthew and a few verses in Mark, you can't tell when it happened. I mean, according to John chapter 11, it says, verse 2, I'm going to read it again. This Mary, whose brother now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. Now, it could just be, this is the order that they're telling the story, and everybody heard about this. So, we're talking about it. It's in retrospect. It happened later, but since we're telling the story, it's like, yeah, it happens later, but it's the same Mary, in case you were, it could be that. I don't know, because this makes it sound like it happened before. This was the same Mary who did that thing. That's how it reads. But when you keep going into 12, you realize, I don't think that's the order. I think the order is what 12 says. So look at Matthew chapter 26, verses 6 through 13. It says, that's the other thing. Somebody said, who was Mary and Martha's father? So look at verses 6 through 13. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of a man known as Simon the Leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste? They asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Now, we know about her wiping the feet in John 12, but this sounds like, he said the exact same thing. They have the same objections, blah, blah, blah. Looks like same thing, same Mary. That's how I interpret it. Matthew 26, 6 through 13. And then Mark 14, 1 through 10. Now, and so they're saying Simon the leper could be Mary and Martha's father, because they're saying it's his home. Was he still there? Had he died? Had he will? They don't know. We don't know. But when you start studying, there was a whole conversation about was Simon the leper, because remember they said that Martha opened the home, like as though she opened the door. It sounded like that. But look at 14 in Mark 14, 1 through 10. Now the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some sly way to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or the people may riot. Don't do it then. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the Leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. Same words they said in John 12. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. Leave her alone, said Jesus. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Oh, Judas. So what I'm reading says that whole perfume situation happened after, and puts it in context when you read John 12. And it could be Simon the leper's house. If you read, Mark and Matthew, it sounds like it was his house. which means was that their father. There are accounts about, Lazarus and if he had any challenges. We don't know. What we know about Lazarus is that he got sick, he died, Jesus raised him, and then they lounged at the table together and had dinner while his sister poured perfume on him and wiped his feet. So, but I didn't know that Lazarus had a hit put out on him. And I loved the line specific, Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. I love that. He loved them all. He sees them all. He knows them all. He hurts when they hurt. And they all have a calling. Their names are all written in this Bible. And which really speaks to what Gina talked about last week, which was just so good. So that was my last set of siblings. So again, 2 sisters and a brother. Last time it was 2 brothers and a sister, but this time I get to do the makeup that we have, which is 2 sisters and a brother. And but it's still the threesome, and they all have purpose, and they're all living together, which is kind of cool. Just the same way they worked together, Miriam and Aaron and Moses, they were all on purpose together. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, they all lived together in the same house. And I mean, I know that was more biblical, that was the family home back then. I get that. But we don't do enough of the family home kind of stuff anymore. I'm just saying. Anyway, all right. That's what I have to share. I don't know what the title of this message is, but I want to see what my sister has to say. So I'm going to unpin myself. And there she is. Hello, my sister.
Hi, sister.
My beautiful one.
Hi, sister. That's very interesting.
What room are you in?
My office.
Okay. I don't remember that being the picture behind you. Okay.
Just very interesting, the different takes on that story, and how some say, all of the a number of the disciples, some just put it right on Judas. And then, yeah, it's interesting that, I'm thinking about Martha. It's like, you don't want to open that. We don't have any Febreze. It's just, don't do it. It's going to be bad. I don't know if you've ever dealt with bodies that are 4 days old in the heat in the desert, but you don't want any of that.
There's a scent that you don't want.
It's less than fresh. Yes. So, yeah. And Jesus, I love how Jesus is like, so he's sleeping. And they were like, sleeping? Okay, we'll do the ditch. And he's like, okay. All right, let me spell it out for you. Because but yeah, it's an interesting story about the 2 sisters and the brother, and talking about how the name Mary in the Bible, if there's a Mary in the Bible, there's a story. Probably 2 or 3 stories. Lots of stories.
Lots of stories about those Marys, and not messing around with those Marys.
And whenever you see a Mary, it seems like there's no Mary that just gets name dropped and then there's nothing. Marys are doing stuff. They're they're active participants in the
powerful name.
Yeah, it's a powerful name. It is Mary, Miriam, whatever version of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it
I
is
think it's Jack that they put a hit on Lazarus.
Well, yeah, right. But people are wrong. Their thinking is all the way wrong, right? They're just all the way wrong. The fact that Jesus wept, is that the only place that Jesus wept is in the Bible? I thought it was closer to the crucifixion. I thought that verse was closer to the crucifixion. Interesting. And it was in empathy for the pain that people he loved were feeling. It's just, wow. Yeah. He didn't cry at the crucifixion. He cried to see our pain. I mean, I know he cried out.
Right. I was going to say he cried out. I don't know if we could count that as the same.
But the verse is like.
But Jesus wept is about our pain.
That's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Even though he knew this is all going to be okay in a moment, but still.
But it doesn't, he knew it wouldn't erase the 4 days of pain that they had experienced, and then that's gotta also be painful to hear the equivalent of, where were you? We believe in you, we trust you, we know what you can do, and why did you you know,
Come, we told you, we sent word he was sick. Why didn't you come?
why didn't you come? So, yeah, that part is, yeah. So I'm sure that there were, he knew, it gives you a glimpse into God knowing and perhaps feeling our pain and, yeah.
Of course he does. How could he not?
Mm-hmm.
Even though he knows how it's going to end. Like,
Right. Even though he knows that we will be reunited with the people we love at some point. And so that's like the pain of, but it doesn't take away the pain now. That's interesting.
yes, it doesn't. It doesn't. And he knows that. And yeah,
Mhm.
you know, when I think of scripture and align it to parenting and our own children, when they're devastated over whatever the thing is, and we know we're getting ready to give them something even bigger, they're devastated that their doll got lost or broken or whatever, and we know we already bought a new one, and it's gonna, but they're so heartbroken over this, and they have to work through it, and we're still gonna do the thing, and it's gonna be better, but they still are mourning
Pain.
that other thing right now.
Mhm.
And we know
And
in a
it's
moment.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it may not
And
be anything we can fix in this life. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But we may know that in the scheme of things, it's something that is not going to cause them pain for long. It's hard.
it is hard. I mean, I remember before I had a baby, and you told me, Connie, when you have a child, you'll find out, even if they have a common cold, you would cut your baby finger off if it meant taking that cold away from them. Like any kind of discomfort or pain or heart, anything, you would give your very life to make that stop. And boy, oh boy, were you right. I mean, it's just, holding your feverish baby while they're crying,
Yeah.
and you're just trying to pull them down, and they're just miserable and hurting and not feeling good. And you're crying too,
Right.
even though you're going to get better. Usually, I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, there are other things, but when the fever's gonna break, baby, you just took the Tylenol, you're gonna feel better soon, my little sweet. But the tears are streaming down your face. I remember those days. So you and that cat on your lap is like the Godfather.
Can you see him other than his tail?
I can't see him other than his tail, but I know that cat is there. And you, the cat is, the Godfather had that. I was like,
Right.
improvised.
What did you say?
It was improvised. That cat that got
Oh, that
on.
is, I never saw the full movie of The Godfather. I've seen snippets of it, but it's just not my thing. But yeah, but I didn't know that. So the cat just what happened to jump on his lap and he went with it. What happened? Where'd the cat come from?
Basically, yeah. Yeah. I'll have to tell you offline because it's not really related to the Bible study. So I'll share it offline. But yeah, it's one of the, I do love The Godfather. It's brilliant filmmaking. And
I've
so
heard it is brilliantly done.
it is. So anyway, but I've read all the little known facts and all the, other things about it. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you, Facebook, for tuning in. Thank you, sister, for being here for the favorite siblings. I'm going to sign off of Facebook.